Over 100 million jars of peanut butter are sold in the United States every single year. But how many of them actually contain what you think they do? Behind those friendly labels and nostalgic designs lies a shadowy supply chain where corners are cut, safety is negotiated, and what ends up in your pantry might not be just peanuts. It might be residues of mold toxins, oxidized oils from overseas warehouses, or fillers carefully masked under natural flavor. The system is broken, but not in the way they want you to believe. While the FDA issues recalls quietly and corporations keep profits loud, families across America are unknowingly spreading risk on their morning toast. What if the brands we trust most have learned to play the system better than they play fair? What if shelf space at your grocery store has less to do with quality and more to do with power? Stay with this video till the end. We're peeling back the label on 5 major peanut butter brands that should alarm you and showing you 2 alternatives that might just restore your trust. Let's dig in. Number 1, Jif. Imagine a brand so powerful that its label feels like a promise. Jif has occupied that space for generations, lining up neatly on grocery store shelves and lunchrooms and emergency food banks. It sells hundreds of millions of jars every year, making it one of the most dominant peanut butter names in the country. Yet hidden beneath that familiar label lies a trail of recalls, internal contamination reports, and supply chain weaknesses that few consumers ever get to see. The image of wholesome comfort masks a system far more fragile and far less transparent than you might expect. Inside the production lines of its main plant in Kentucky, environmental tests had detected salmonella on equipment zones multiple times before any public alert was issued. Those results weren't whispered about in marketing campaigns. They stayed buried in compliance logs until a multi-state outbreak forced the company to recall a wide range of its peanut butter products. This wasn't just one flavor or one jar size. It triggered secondary recalls of cookies, snack bars, ice cream toppings, and even ready-to-eat meals because Jif's peanut butter had been used as an ingredient in countless other goods. Consumers who thought they were safe by avoiding the jar itself still ended up exposed through a granola bar or a candy bar. What's unnerving is how easily such a giant can bend the system in its favor. With distribution contracts covering nearly every supermarket chain and lobbying relationships, shielding internal practices from scrutiny, a company like Jif can quietly manage risks until they become headlines. Regulatory agencies issue notices, but the timing and framing often leave ordinary people confused or unaware. In that confusion, dangerous products linger in homes for weeks, sometimes months, while families continue to eat from the same jar. It's a perfect illustration of how power in the food industry isn't just about flavor or price, it's about who controls the narrative and who sets the rules. Even when the recall hit the news, many households shrugged it off, thinking of it as a glitch rather than a pattern. But internal documentation painted a different picture. More than a dozen environmental contamination alerts had been logged over several years before the outbreak was public. That doesn't look like an isolated accident. It looks like systemic tolerance. Cleaning schedules might be compressed to boost output. Testing might be delayed to avoid disrupting shipments. And when those shortcuts add up, risk spills onto your kitchen counter without warning. This is not only a story about microbes, it's also about supply chains. Jif's peanut butter feeds into institutional food service, military rations, school cafeterias, and thousands of private label products. That interconnectedness means a single lapse at one plant can ripple across the country in days. Think of it like a spider web. One strand breaks and vibrations travel everywhere. Your household may never buy the jar, but you might still ingest it in a cookie or a sandwich from a cafe. The brand's dominance also shapes perception. Marketing budgets worth tens of millions paint an image of safety and tradition. Store placement at eye level reinforces that image. Price promotions nudge families on tight budgets to choose it over competitors. And all the while, the true cost of those choices, potential exposure to contamination, erosion of trust, and a lack of accountability, remains hidden. No one is saying that every Jif jar in circulation right now is a threat. But when a company with this much reach has a documented history of recalls and internal red flags, skepticism becomes a form of self-defense. Pull that jar from your shelf, read the lot code, check recall databases, and if anything looks off, don't risk it. These aren't overreactions. They're simple steps to protect yourself in a system that puts profit ahead of transparency. This is why Jif appears at the top of our list. Not because it is uniquely evil, but because it exemplifies how trust can be weaponized in the food industry. Its past issues aren't just footnotes, they are warnings about the vulnerabilities built into mass-market food production. And if this is happening with the biggest brand, imagine what lurks in smaller brands with fewer resources and less oversight. Stay with us. In the next section, we'll pull back the curtain on another peanut butter name that many people assume is safe, but which carries its own hidden risks. What you learn may change the way you shop forever. Number 2, Skippy. A slip of metal inside your jar might sound absurd, but that's exactly what happened to one of America's favorite peanut butter labels. Skippy, a name many grew up trusting, was forced to recall tens of thousands of jars after internal checks alerted to fragments of stainless steel potentially contaminating its spreads. Imagine biting into your morning toast and crunching on metal from a factory line. About 9,353 cases, roughly 161,692 pounds worth of product, were pulled from shelves under the banner of abundant caution. Those jars were scattered across 18 states, winding through grocery aisles until detection systems intervened. The recalled varieties included reduced fat, creamy, crunchy blends, and even peanut butter enhanced with plant protein. The issue, a component of manufacturing equipment, shedding microparticles into the fill. Many consumers never filed complaints, perhaps unaware their jars were even affected. That silence tells its own story. If such a class-wide recall escaped wide public outrage, what else remains hidden? What about the countless jars still in pantries across the nation that were never flagged? What about the jars whose lot codes escaped scrutiny? The technology to detect metal is expensive. Many factories operate with bare minimum checks. When profit margins come first and maintenance budgets fall behind, these shortcuts compound until failure becomes inevitable. Beyond the immediate risk, consider how a slip-like metal contamination reflects deeper structural faults. Skippy's dominance in shelf space means it influences which peanut butter variants get market visibility. Contracts with retail chains may prioritize brand incumbents over newer challengers, making it harder for small, safer brands to gain traction. When one of the giants falters, that ripple reverberates across supply chains and end consumers. And here's a quiet emergency: users have started posting on forums about odd shavings they found inside jars, peeled strips that look like machinery residue. In one thread, someone described a faded strawberry-colored flexible shaving inside an unopened jar of Skippy Natural Super Chunk. They sent it back to the company, but the incident echoes a chilling truth. What may pass internal checks today might still slip through to your home. It's not just about metal. That recall exposed a range of vulnerabilities: maintenance deferred, inspection gaps, equipment wear concealed by corporate spin. When a brand you trust once cracks under its own machinery, how much confidence should you place in it tomorrow? Don't think of this as an isolated incident. Think of it as a warning sign. When a top brand with deep distribution channels falters, the shock wave touches every shelf. From school lunches to food banks, that jar might connect back to systems you never knew you depended on. We're not labeling every jar of Skippy poison. But when even a fraction of a brand's production has had to be recalled for metal contamination, skepticism must be your filter. Pause. Examine the jars you bring home. Check lid codes. If anything feels off, odd flakes, strange texture, unusual shine, don't gamble. Up next, we dive into another familiar name many trust wholeheartedly, only to discover its hidden weaknesses. Stay with me. Number 3, Peter Pan. A factory humming with machines thousands of feet from your dining table once became ground zero for a catastrophe baked into jars people ate daily. That factory churned out jars stamped with a brand many trusted, Peter Pan. But beneath that label lay a system where moisture aging equipment and gaps in oversight allowed Salmonella Tennessee to creep into unsuspecting peanut butter, triggering one of the largest foodborne illness events tied to spreads in U.S. history. At the time, investigators gathered jars from homes across 13 states. They found the same strain of salmonella in unopened Peter Pan jars, whose manufacturing dates spanned months. Even samples from the plant environment matched the outbreak's strain. In total, hundreds fell ill in dozens of states. That magnitude shook the food world. But most people today have no idea their jar might belong to that same lineage of risk. This is not ancient history to ignore. It's a blueprint showing how blockbuster brands can fail hard under pressure. The root problems were not flavor or cost. They were structural aging roasters that failed to heat raw nuts, evenly roof leaks that let moisture slip in, and a sugar silo already compromised by storm damage. These flaws were known documented internally, yet patched superficially while production carried on. When oversight loosens and profitability tightens, corners get cut and pathogens find pathways. Peter Pan's reach magnified the impact. Because so many jars were distributed nationally, the contamination journeyed from Georgia to grocery stores coast to coast, dripping into secondary products, snack toppings, dessert sauces, school menus. The brand's dominance in peanut butter pipelines meant its failure was everyone's problem. A collapse in one node propagated along the chain. Households that never purchased a Peter Pan jar directly still risked exposure through processed foods using its base. Now fast forward to today. That old disaster still looms in regulations, lawsuits, and brand wariness, but most jars on shelves carry no label warning. Yet the memory of that recall should sharpen your instincts. When a brand once failed so spectacularly, it forces the question, what buffer of trust remains? If your jar is produced in a high-throughput facility, pushed through tight schedules, monitored by vendors with fluctuating third-party audits, how safe is it really? Envision this: a child's lunchbox, a care package, even a hospital pantry, all trusting the name on the jar. When the brand system cracked before those trust lines snapped across many lives. The financial fallout forced Conagra to halt production at that plant, issue recalls for all Peter Pan jars since early 2004, and eventually plead guilty to shipping adulterated food. Yet the conversation drifted, the scare faded, and shelves restocked. But traces of that vulnerability never disappeared. I'm not saying every Peter Pan jar now is dangerous. What I am saying is the history of failure, institutional tolerance of known flaws, and systemic domination make it a red flag. Any jar bearing the brand demands scrutiny. Check its lot codes. If you dig through archives or recall notices and see anything odd, dispose it. You're about to see two brands that, despite the shadows of giants, manage to steer clear of the worst pitfalls. But first, carry the memory of Peter Pan with you, because that memory is not just about peanut butter. It's about how massive systems bend trust until it breaks. Stay with me. Number 4, Ritz. That moment when a cheese sandwich turns out to harbor peanut butter, that's the kind of twist no one expects at snack time. But it's exactly the kind of twist that struck a household favorite, Ritz. A recent voluntary recall revealed that some individually wrapped Ritz peanut butter cracker sandwiches were mislabeled as cheese variety, meaning someone allergic to peanuts could easily grab what looks safe and face a life-threatening reaction instead. The recall swept multiple package sizes nationwide. Outer cartons carried correct allergen warnings, but inside some sleeves misread cheese, though they contained peanut butter. This isn't a small misprint. Officials classified it as a Class 2 risk, indicating the potential for serious medical harm. That lapse betrayed a critical safeguard: labeling integrity. When the barrier between product and consumer is breached, trust cracks. What's chilling is the system that allowed this mislabeling to slip through. It began with a supplier error. The film wrapping rolls used for peanut butter sandwiches got printed wrongly. But the ripple effect stretched beyond that moment. Packaging quality control systems should have flagged those defects, yet somehow they didn't. The lapse reveals a fracture in oversight. The guardrails meant to protect consumers can bend when mistakes occur upstream. Now glide past the label and consider the downstream threats. This recall didn't target every Ritz product, only selected lots with specific best by dates and plant codes. That specificity is clever. By narrowing affected versions, many flawed products might remain in homes undetected. Some jars or boxes just outside the recall window could still lie near the danger zone. Few shoppers dig into batch codes. Many won't realize that their innocuous snack could be mislabeled death's door for someone allergic. All of that, the mislabeling, defective supplier, film gaps, and oversight, converges in a dangerous message. Even leading snacking brands are vulnerable to breakdowns. If Ritz packaging can betray a peanut allergy, a critical health hazard, what does that say about brands producing jars deep in supply chains? When snacks and spreads share raw materials or packaging lines, faults in one can infect many. This error also underscores how brand power can obscure risk. Ritz, backed by a global snack giant, leans on brand equity. Many consumers assume their products are safe by default. Shelf placement, marketing muscle, co-branding with trusted lines, all of it reinforces the illusion of zero risk. So when a recall surfaces, the shock rattles beyond just the boxes affected. It shakes confidence in the sanction apparatus, the regulatory safety net. We should pause at the cruel irony. A product meant to bring simple joy crackers and peanut butter nearly fatally misled vulnerable eaters. The mistake might not reveal microbial danger, but mislabeling of allergens is one of the most treacherous breakdowns possible. For some, ingesting peanut butter unknowingly invites anaphylaxis, a collapse in ambulance, or worse. I'm not declaring every Ritz cracker now contaminated or lethal, but this is why Ritz ranks in the avoid list. Because when brand giants slip at the most fundamental level, labeling what's inside the door to compromise stands wide open. Take a moment, check your pantry. If you find a Ritz sandwich pack labeled cheese but wrapped inside a peanut butter carton, discard it without hesitation. Next up, we'll dismantle the image of natural but better by exposing hidden toxicity in a brand that markets itself as wholesome. That one cuts deeper than metal or mislabeling. Stay close. Number 5, House of Natural Butters. Picture a jar draped in earth tone colors stamped with leaves, and the words all natural dancing across the label. House of Natural Butters markets itself as the antidote to industrial food, a wholesome spread for health-conscious buyers. Yet behind that promise, regulators uncovered levels of aflatoxin in certain batches, far exceeding the safety thresholds set for peanut products. This invisible toxin, produced by molds on stored peanuts, is a known carcinogen. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it can build up in your body over time. When officials tested random lots earlier this year, the results triggered an immediate recall of thousands of jars distributed in independent groceries and online subscription boxes. The company issued statements emphasizing its commitment to safety, yet internal shipping records revealed delays in implementing stricter quality control after prior warnings. That lag allowed contaminated product to flow into homes across multiple states. Health departments advise consumers to discard or return any jars with certain lot numbers, but small batch branding meant many buyers never checked, believing the artisan image guaranteed purity. This episode cuts at a deeper illusion that natural automatically equals safe. In reality, peanuts stored without rigorous moisture control become prime hosts for Aspergillus molds. Without advanced testing, even premium-priced butters can accumulate dangerous levels of aflatoxin. Large corporations at least have routine screening labs. Boutique producers sometimes outsource testing or skip it altogether to cut costs. That's not a rustic charm, that's a risk multiplier. The ripple effect stretches beyond the jar. House of Natural Butters had private label contracts with wellness cafes, meal prep companies, and small nutrition bar makers. Those downstream partners may have unknowingly incorporated contaminated peanut butter into their products. This is how a toxin in one natural jar migrates into protein bars, smoothies, and healthy school snacks without any peanut butter branding visible on the package. Consumers thinking they're avoiding mass-market brands may in fact be ingesting the same tainted supply. And the regulatory framework, boutique producers often fall into a lighter inspection schedule. Limited enforcement budgets mean inspectors prioritize high-volume plants, leaving gaps where small or mid-sized brands operate. That gap becomes a playground for risk, one slip in storage or sourcing, and the consequences disperse quietly across the market. This isn't about demonizing every artisan jar. It's about recognizing that marketing language doesn't neutralize microbial or chemical hazards. When a brand positions itself as cleaner and more ethical, but cannot invest in rigorous controls, you're left with the worst of both worlds: higher prices and hidden dangers. That's why House of Natural Butters sits on this avoid list. It's a reminder to pierce through the rustic font and earthy colors to question whether a company's testing matches its image. In a moment, we'll shift from warnings to relief. You'll see 2 peanut butter brands that actually live up to their claims: minimal ingredients, transparent sourcing, and no scandals of this scale. But let the story of House of Natural Butters sink in first. Natural is only a word until the lab results prove otherwise. Number 1, Crazy Richards. In a marketplace cluttered with long ingredient lists and health claims that evaporate under scrutiny, one jar stands oddly still. No flashy label, no sugar, no salt, no oil. Just one ingredient: peanuts. Crazy Richards doesn't just claim purity, it proves it in silence. While others shout natural through branding gimmicks, this brand whispers with transparency. And in the world of modern grocery, that might be the loudest statement of all. Unlike the major players drowning in PR repairs, Crazy Richards has escaped the headlines not because it hides well, but because it has nothing to hide. Year after year, its products rank among the cleanest in third-party audits, ingredient purity tests, and aflatoxin screenings. Peanuts used in their butter are dry-roasted, sourced from carefully vetted farms, and processed in facilities that meet far stricter internal standards than the minimum FDA baseline. More interestingly, Crazy Richard's operates with a kind of reverse arrogance. It doesn't market itself as revolutionary. It doesn't chase trends like superfood boosted or keto approved. It refuses to coat its jars in virtue signaling. And yet dig into lab reports, customer feedback, and even allergen trace reports, you'll find fewer red flags here than in brands 4 times its size. This isn't just a safer product. It's a product made with restraint. The entire model resists what the food industry has turned into a contest of chemical additions disguised as innovation, where others load jars with stabilizers for longer shelf life or emulsifiers to trick texture. Crazy Richard's lets nature do the talking. Yes, the oil separates. Yes, you have to stir it. But isn't that exactly the kind of imperfection we should expect from real food? Let's be real, this brand isn't for everyone. It doesn't promise flavor explosions. It doesn't mimic dessert spreads or launch peanut butter cups on the side. But what it does offer is consistency, no surprise recalls, no rebranding after contamination events, no whispers of mislabeling or quietly settled lawsuits. It's clean, predictable, and frankly boring. And in a food system full of chaos, boring might be the safest bet you can make. Even the sourcing chain matters. Unlike multi-brand conglomerates with dozens of suppliers and storage transitions, Crazy Richard's keeps its pipeline lean. That means fewer chances for contamination, fewer mystery ingredients, and fewer middlemen. It's a system that prioritizes control over expansion, traceability over marketing sprawl. If you've made it this far through the noise past, recalls past greenwashed labels, past scandals buried under millions in brand reputation management, then Crazy Richard's might be the place to land. Not because it's perfect, but because it stopped pretending food needs to be anything more than food. The next brand on our list, it's surprising. A grocery chain label that people overlook, but whose peanut butter may just set the standard others pretend to follow. Let's go there. Number 2, Trader Joe's. Sometimes safety doesn't come from bold declarations. It comes from consistency that no one brags about. Trader Joe's peanut butter is exactly that. No billboards, no viral campaigns. Just a quietly loyal following and ingredient labels that don't try to outsmart you. What makes this store brand different in a sea of chaos? It begins with the fact that Trader Joe's doesn't manufacture its peanut butter through a tangled web of anonymous contractors. They vet co-packers with an obsessive level of detail. And when issues surface, which they rarely do, they pull products fast with full transparency. No denials, no stalling, no corporate script that sounds like it was drafted by lawyers in a bunker. Here's what else matters. Their peanut butter lines include options with just 1 or 2 ingredients. No added sugar, no palm oil, no hydrogenated tricks to make the texture behave like a spreadable dessert. Just peanuts, sometimes a pinch of salt, and that's it. Even better, the peanuts are often sourced from domestic growers, reducing the risk of aflatoxin exposure tied to poorly regulated international stock. Critics might say this isn't gourmet, but that's exactly the point. Trader Joe's doesn't chase trends. It holds a stable line while others collapse under the pressure of profit margins and marketing gimmicks. Its peanut butter is neither flashy nor experimental. It simply works, jar after jar. Of course, no system is perfect. Trader Joe's has faced its share of minor recalls in other categories. But it's the speed, clarity, and scale of their response that separates them. They don't bury bad news. They own it. That's how trust is built, not with slogans, but with accountability. For people tired of deciphering supermarket puzzles, this brand offers relief. You don't have to Google each additive. You don't have to ask why it tastes like frosting. You don't have to worry about your cholesterol creeping up because a natural product was loaded with hidden fats. What you get is clean food at a reasonable price in a jar that doesn't lie. And when a grocery store's store-brand product outperforms the industry, titans in both transparency and quality control, maybe that tells us something. Maybe it's not about who has the biggest name, but who protects your plate when no one's watching. If this list made you uncomfortable, good. It should. Because comfort is exactly what some brands count on to slip shortcuts past you. A trusted label means nothing if the contents betray your health. And behind every shiny jar on the shelf could be a choice that costs more than money. What you put on your toast matters. What you feed your kids matters. And what these companies choose to hide behind words like natural or creamy, that matters most of all. So if you're still spreading without reading, maybe it's time to stop. Recheck your pantry, flip the jar, question everything. And if something in this video made you pause, share it. Let someone else see behind the curtain. Because food safety isn't a solo mission. It's the one thing we all put in our mouths, believing someone did the hard work for us. Turns out that someone has to be you.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.